Could these be any louder?
We are 25 hours away from Game 7 in Smashville, the first ever Game 7 inside Bridgestone Arena. You excited? This is Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Ryan Porth, joined this evening by Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio, which you can also hear him in a couple hours on Penalty Box Radio at 8 p.m. But wait, that's not it. We also have Jeremy K. Gover of the Preds Radio Network, reporter for the network and theGameNashville.com, in studio with us as well. Gover.
It's a special cuddle edition tonight.
How are you? It is a special edition of Preds Insiders here.
I sense you omitted a word there.
If you had your money on Gover mentioning cuddles first, then you win.
Yes, so Gover wins. That bet's
got that out of the way.
Yes,
there we go.
Absolutely.
Hockey talk time.
Now we can move on.
Game 7, the biggest question for this Preds team going into Game 7 is, can they replicate their road effort at home? And everyone asks that because in Games 4 and 6, those were the two best games from the Preds in this series. In between there are some home games where they have not played their A game. They have not played defensively like they did in Winnipeg. So, Gover, I start with you on this one. Can the Preds replicate their road effort at home?
I think they can if they learn from 4 and 6 combined, because they went out and did the same thing in 4, and they played a great game for 58 minutes. But then in Game 5, they were just like, okay, well, we can go back home. We can just be wheeling and dealing. You know, they can kind of up the pace, and they can just push the pace of the puck and all that. And it didn't work for them. So if they can say, okay, 4 was great. What do we do there? We concentrate on defense first and then let the offense come as it may. Game 6, same thing. Defense first, offense come as it may. So if they can put those two together, okay, obviously this is a formula for success, then yes, I believe that they can do the same thing as best as possible, come out in Game 7 and win.
First of all, they need to act like it's Canada. Like Joe Rexrode even said, wear white.
Great column, by the way, if you've not read it.
Yeah, get your A's going, put in extra U's when you're spelling everything. And
organization.
Yeah, organization. No, but for real, like what Gover even said, too, there's a lot of things, too, that they did in those games that they can absolutely replicate mentally. I think a lot of it comes down to the mental game, and Ryan Johansson even said it today after practice about how they have to ignore all the other stuff that's going on around them, whether it's the crowd, the hype, everything like that, play their game, don't let themselves get distracted from anything, and that's going to be so important because it's the first Game 7 at home that this team is going to experience, that this fan base is going to experience. They've always had to watch on TVs or traveled on the road to see their team play in a Game 7. So obviously it's going to be a new feeling for so many people, for so many different fans out there as well. So it's going to be a new experience. Ignore the distractions. Go out and play your game. They have a game plan. They need to stick to it. And we've seen they've had game plans before, but they've varied from it. As long as they stick to the game plan, they know what works. And obviously Winnipeg's going to come out expecting what they're going to do anyways. Winnipeg knows what Nashville did to shut them down. It's how are they going to make those adjustments during the game when they have to venture away from a game plan a little bit to get back to it, to be able to be competitive and to dominate the game.
Justin, I'm glad you brought up Ryan Johansson's quote because I had it pulled up from Robbie Stanley of NHL.com to quote exactly. This was Ryan Johansson's quote to Robbie Stanley earlier today. He said, quote, I think it's and the quote is, what's the biggest difference between playing on the road and at home in this series? He said, quote, I think it's a different mindset. I think as a Predator and playing at Bridgestone, you come to the arena and the atmosphere and the energy is remarkable. It's hard to stay level and keep your emotions in check because you've got some famous singer doing the anthem and you've got all this hype and you want to go out there and score a goal and you want to play offense. But you've got to make sure you're doing all the right things away from the puck and on the defensive side as well. I think that might be a reason we haven't played as strongly at home or whatever, but we just need to focus on our game tomorrow and not worry about all the distractions from all those things, end quote.
I just think that that's what a lot of us said coming into, well, I shouldn't say coming into, after Game 5 was, well, wait a minute. If Game 4 was this great all-around performance for 58 of the 60 minutes, and then they go to Game 6 and they have a formula. They have a successful formula. And why didn't they go back to and I think that was a lot of assists. So now here we have a player on record saying that, look, there's a lot of hoopla. We want to go out and score for our fans. There's a lot of pressure to do that, to be exciting, over the top. It's Game 7, boys and girls. All of the desire to put on a show should be over. It should be, look, if we don't play the way we can play, whether it's 1-0 or 7-0, if we don't do that, we're going home.
Wait. So you're saying the series was not over after they collapsed in Game 5? It wasn't over?
It was for a lot of people,
There are a lot of people, didn't realize the Predators can bounce back, and they've done that so many times in the regular season and in the playoffs already that they have an extreme amount of bounce back when they lay a dud.
And the fact that it's only one game and not a 7-game series.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's a best of 7, because some teams have off nights. Predators have proven that they have off nights, but they've also had plenty of very on nights, and they had that in Game 6.
The biggest thing with how they have played in Winnipeg is that they have completely shut them down. They've played lockdown defense, and when they've done that, and when they've done that successfully, they have frustrated the Jets. We've seen that from Patrick Laine twice now in this series, where after Game 4 he slashed his stick up against the boards, even though he scored with 50 seconds left, 45 seconds left, however many seconds it was left, and then in Game 6, where he shot the puck at Victor Arvidsson after Victor Arvidsson scored into the empty net, which are signs of frustration from a young player. And I do wonder if those frustrations are shared by some other players on that team that don't have experience, that are used to scoring 4, 5, 6 goals a game, and they were basically shut out for back-to-back home games, which Pekka Rinne in Game 6 was the first goaltender to shut out the Jets in Bell MTS Place all season.
It's just, if that frustration mounts itself in Laine, no matter what the score is in Game 7, if the spotlight is too big for him to handle, that kind of thing, and something doesn't go his way and he doesn't like it and he kind of acts out like that, I think we give him a pass because he's a young kid, right? Mm-hmm. But if he does that, all that's going to do is play into the Preds' favor, because he's going to take some stupid penalty, or he's going to slash a guy, he's going to go to the box, and now one of their best players is off the ice for 2 minutes. Or, maybe they're within striking distance. Maybe it's 3-1 Preds with 5 minutes left in the game, and they pull their goaltender early or something, and they score the empty net goal, and he goes and just takes somebody out. Well, now their comeback is now over, right? With all intents and purposes, because he would be selfish in that situation. So for me, if I'm a Predators fan, I'm looking at it and being like, yeah, let him do that. Let him be stupid. But at the same time, you're right, Ryan. If it's shared emotion by other players who have never been in this position before, then hey.
This is where experience should come into play for the Nashville Predators. One, because you look at a couple seasons ago when they had to go and win a Game 7, then they lost a Game 7, got blown out of the water, and losing a Game 7.
Well,
but
okay, that's the fact. But travel, okay.
I don't want to use the travel excuse for so much of this. Don't give me that. I don't want to use a travel excuse. They're professionals. They're supposed to be able to handle it, and they'll even say that too. Yeah, they're not going to make an excuse, but they have the experience of what it's like to win and lose in a Game 7. They know what that's like to be able to shut everything out, like we're talking about distractions before, shut everything out, and make sure they focus on the game plan. Winnipeg doesn't have it. They don't know what it's like with how young they are. So many players in this team, and you have to include a Nick Bonino and what he's been able to accomplish in his career. So many players in the Nashville Predators have been able to experience so much of this that they should be able to come in and be able to focus because of that.
Speaking of experience, yesterday at the media availability over at the airport, I asked Peter Laviolette about the experience and whether or not it factors into a Game 7.
I agree. It's good. It doesn't mean anything. The team that plays the best probably will have the best chance of being successful. I'm glad our guys have some experience. I'm glad they've got some scars on them. I think scars make you a little bit tougher. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to those 60 minutes.
That was head coach Peter Laviolette yesterday. And any intangible factors that he was asked about, whether it was home ice or when I asked him about the experience, he kept going back to whichever team plays the best should be the one that wins. But I do think those intangibles can factor into one of these teams playing the best in a Game 7 tomorrow night.
He's trying to send a message to his team through the media, right?
Totally.
To say, look, who cares about any of these other – this is all great for the people that aren't paid to be here, right? But you're paid to be here, so you have to focus on the game.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the experience just for 1 second. We would never have brought this up last year because the Predators didn't have any experience in big games. right? Okay, they had the Game 7 against Anaheim 2 years ago, right? And they won that one. Okay, fine. And they took San Jose to a gritty 7 games as well, the ones you mentioned, Bradford. But there wasn't a long playoff run. There wasn't this, and so all of a sudden last year they go on this magical Stanley Cup final run, and nobody's saying anything about experience. It's a magical run, Cinderella story almost, blah, 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 blah. But then this year, what do we hear all the time? We even asked Linda Cohn about that a few Preds Insiders ago, Ryan.
Yeah.
I even specifically said, is it an overstatement? Am I oversimplifying it to say that the Predators are more experienced, therefore they'll beat the Winnipeg Jets? The answer is no. It's a factor in the series, as there are many things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who has more experience because the Predators didn't have it last year, and now they do.
What about home ice, Justin? What kind of factor do you think home ice will play into this Game 7? Because both teams in this series through 6 games are 1-2 at home.
I think with home ice, what it comes down to, and I've mentioned this, and I know it's blown up in my face before, but it's the last change, and it's the strategy and how to utilize that. Again, it's up to the team and which team's playing better, but overall, in terms of coaching strategy, it's what kind of matchup do you want there on the ice, and it's especially true when you're in an offensive or defensive zone. Who do you want to place out there? For instance, it was interesting to see how Nick Bonino was out there for such a long period of time to close out Game 6 in Winnipeg. Out of 2 minutes and 20 seconds to close the game, he's out there for 1:55. And for some reason, Peter Laviolette just kept sending him back out there. It didn't matter who he was going up against, but he's able to dominate, and Nick Bonino had that experience. So I think in terms of home, if you're able to use it to your advantage, it's a small intangible. It doesn't mean it's going to decide a game, but it's one little advantage you have is the change-up.
For some reason, that reason is trust.
Absolutely.
And Nick Bonino has the most Game 7 experience on this Preds roster. He has played in 5 Game 7s. Coming up next, a player that has played in 2 Game 7s, Pekka Rinne. What does this Game 7 mean for him and the Nashville Predators? We'll get into that next. They are Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio, Jeremy K. Gover of the Preds Radio Network and theGameNashville.com. I'm Ryan Porth. This is Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Love it when I start typing Pekka Rinne in Google. First thing is Pekka Rinne wife. It's the first thing that pops up.
Well, that's almost with any athlete,
I know. Pekka Rinne wife.
especially with the female athletes, every single one.
I don't know, at least they're at home and get to stay on their routine. Normal time, 7 o'clock.
Not an 8:30.
No,
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about
Yeah.
that. You just do your thing and just be ready to go normal time.
Yep. And then kick ass. Take names.
Oh man, you're not a Marvel person, are you? Damn. And I can't spoil the show, the movie for Gover. What Porth just said. I can't.
We walk out?
No, because he's not going to get it either.
Okay.
It's Porth. He's not going to get it.
Okay. I mean, I'm willing to,
I'm not going to spoil for you. Do you want me to get the door?
We have a couple minutes, Bradford. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know.
Jacket.
You're just leaving doors open over here when you could be shutting them. I hope that's rolling.
It is.
See what I have to deal with all the damn time. Leaving doors open, snoring the crap out of everything. Put a little sound machine on.
Me. I had to put the sound machine on to drown out your snores, dude.
Welcome back into Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Ryan Porth alongside Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio and Jeremy K. Gover of the Preds Radio Network and theGameNashville.com. We are previewing Game 7, Preds Jets, tomorrow night inside Bridgestone Arena, the first ever Game 7 held in Smashville. Pregame at 6, puck drop at 7 right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And there will be a microscope on number 35 in net for the Nashville Predators. Pekka Rinne has been a little up and down in this series, but he's coming off a 34-save shutout, the first goaltender to shut out the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg all season long. And he has 2 days rest in between games 6 and 7. His stats this year on 2 days rest, courtesy of Jacob Underwood on Twitter, an 11-3 record with a 1.99 goals against average and a .936 save percentage. Those stats are pretty good. And yesterday, head coach Peter Laviolette at the media availability at the airport was asked about Pekka Rinne's success on 2 days rest.
Listen, Pex has been great, and I answered that question before last game, and him coming off the game, and we have to take responsibility for the way we played in front of him a couple games ago. He was awesome last night. I thought our guys did a good job in front of him, and that combination to me seems to work well. So, again, you're right about the day off where you get a break tomorrow and we don't have to play. I think it's good for him. I think it's good for our team. Again, Winnipeg's getting that same day, and that's the thing about the playoffs. Everything's always equal, and that's what I love about it. It's not there's no disadvantage to anybody inside of a series like this. Our time off is their time off. Our travel is their travel. And it actually comes down to the game, which is probably the way it should be.
That was Preds head coach Peter Laviolette yesterday. And Pekka Rinne obviously is the backbone of this team. He has been for a long time. And his success with this organization, Justin, locally has made him a legend in Smashville, especially, with what he's done the last couple seasons, bouncing back from a few seasons where he didn't quite look like himself, but was a big reason why the Nashville Predators made it to the Stanley Cup final last year, became, the 34th goaltender to win 300 career games in the National Hockey League. He could run for mayor of Smashville and win that race. But nationally, I wonder what kind of microscope he's going to be under going into tomorrow night's game, and how tomorrow night's game can maybe affect his legacy nationally, because there have been some games on a national scale where he hasn't been as good in recent years. You think of Game 7 in San Jose in 2016. You think of Games 2 and 5 in Pittsburgh last year in the Stanley Cup final. There have been some good games on a big national scale where he has been very good, at home in the postseason. The last few years he's been awesome, especially in against Pittsburgh in the Stanley Cup final, those games against the Blackhawks, the Game 7 in Anaheim in 2016, he was awesome. But I do wonder what kind of microscope he's going to be under nationally with, the Pierre LeBruns and Scott Burnsides that will be in the building and everybody watching at home on TV, and what tomorrow night's game could mean for his national legacy. His local legacy is set. He's a legend. But nationally, I think it's a big game for him tomorrow.
It absolutely is, especially when you have 2 nights without a hockey game. You have everyone's going to be watching this one. This is the only game, the only ticket in town, the only ticket in the NHL that people are going to be watching. There isn't any other distraction out there of other series that are going on. Everyone is focused on this series. So every hockey fan out there in North America will be watching to see what happens. Under a microscope is exactly how you're putting it, because they're going to be watching how Pekka Rinne handles it. They're going to be looking for Philip Forsberg to make some explosive play. They're going to be watching PK Subban to see how he's able to perform under this pressure. Those big names for this Nashville Predators team is what people are going to be looking out for. Pekka Rinne, the big thing for him is the team itself. It comes down to the team. You want his legacy to be big nationally, you better play well in front of him. Because if you ruin that legacy, you're going to have a lot of fans who are going to be upset at you because of what you did in front of your goaltender. It's a team sport. They have to play well in front of him to allow him to be great. He can't just keep stealing games all the time. You can't rely on him to steal games. You have to play good defense in front of him, allow him to see the puck, and have 3 guys screening him from your own team. Allow him to be good. You have to be good in front of him in order for him to be good as well.
That's a great point, because I've been saying it this whole week, and I've been called a Rinne apologist and all kinds of stuff for this, for not agreeing with the lazy fan, I suppose. But look, all the goals are not his fault, okay? But at the end of the day, he does own that stat line, right? The save percentage, the goals against, and all that. He owns that. And you're right, Ryan. This is Game 7. It's the biggest stage because no other game is available unless you're going to watch some AHL Calder Cup playoffs.
And this is the most hyped series of the Stanley Cup
Right.
playoffs so far, with the top 2 teams in the National Hockey League.
People were talking about this series, couldn't wait for it back in February and March. So they've been waiting. So everyone said, I think for the most part, hey, it's going to go 7 games. We don't know how it's going to go, but it's going to go 7 games. And here we are with a play, and you win, you go on, and lose, and you go home scenario. So Rinne has to play well, but he doesn't have to be elite as long as the team in front of him plays up to their standards as well. And then what you do is you minimize Rinne drifting out of his net. You minimize Rene coming too far out of the crease. You minimize Rene being maybe too conservative. You minimize all that because that was the big argument toward me when I broke down Game 3 and said, how could he possibly get to this puck? And then look at how open this guy is over here. And one of the number one things people said was, well, he's playing too far off his crease. Okay, well, guess why a goaltender does that? Because he has no faith in the guys in front of him at that moment. So if the defense plays well, then those things get cut down.
I would expect nothing less than his best tomorrow night in Game 7. Think of all the big playoff games inside that arena that he's played in, whether it's a clinching game or the Stanley Cup final games against Pittsburgh.
Where he was brilliant, by the way.
When he was brilliant, I would expect nothing less than his best from Pekka Rinne tomorrow night.
So I'll say this. I'll say that he can do a lot of good for his national perception with a good performance, but almost 3 or 4 times as bad with a bad performance. So in other words, he's kind of status quo. Maybe he goes up in some people's eyes. Okay, he was made for this moment. He's a big game goaltender, that kind of thing. But if he allows 4 goals on 12 shots and they put in Saros or something, whether they win the game or not, right? If he does that, it's Pekka Rinne. We saw it happen against Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh, and now this.
Yeah, and when you look at the negative eye too, that's just how it always is. You have to have 5 positives to get to that 1 equal of 1 negative. Because 1 negative could be so huge and detrimental to someone's career and what they see. But you're looking at this too is the fancy stats folks as well, and this is not harping on them. It's that they're looking at Pekka Rinne under an even bigger microscope. Sure. They're looking and analyzing all the different shot opportunities, the type of shots he's having to face, all those different things. I mean, Andrew Berkshire is one of the biggest guys that's always really looking at him too and saying, Pekka was really great here, but he'll also call him out, especially when he's horrible too. So it's that as well when you have people with big followings in the national media too that can make or break a legacy based on one performance in one game too.
I also think not only for this single game for Pekka Rinne, but what this single game could mean in the next month for Pekka Rinne. Because if you win this game, not to say that this has been your toughest test facing Winnipeg, every series from here on out, Vegas, if the Preds are fortunate enough to win the Game 7 tomorrow night, Vegas will be a tough matchup. And then if they're fortunate enough to win 4 games in that series, then Tampa or Washington would be a tough matchup. But he still needs to get his name on that Stanley Cup, and he desperately wants his name on that Stanley Cup. That is why I would expect nothing less than his best tomorrow night, and he doesn't have very many chances left in his career to go win a Stanley Cup. And one of the big reasons why they wanted home ice was for a game like this one to go win that Stanley Cup and help them in their journey to that, because playing at home gives them the best opportunity to go win that thing.
You said he needs to win a Stanley Cup. In what context? Needs to do what?
I mean, he feels like he needs to.
Well, of course he does.
Right.
But I'm saying you use the word he
Gover.
needs to win. Well, no, because we had a conversation off air about is he Hall of Famer? Is he name in the rafters? Is he?
Well, the Raptors is the plan.
No, right.
35 will
Right,
be
Hall of Fame. That's a reach even with a cup.
No,
for
right.
Pekka.
That's what I'm saying. Is you use the word need. So I thought that you were trying to bring us to that a point like that.
No.
It's of that grandiose scale.
No.
Rinne's getting a statue eventually outside Bridgestone.
Well, yeah, it's true.
if they're gonna go the statue route, him.
I mean, to your point, Bradford, about a Hall of Fame bid, I mean, he would probably have to win another cup or another Vezina to go along with a Vezina and a cup this season.
Curtis Joseph has the 5th most wins all time in the NHL. 454 wins in 943 games. Hall of Famer? Nope. That to me means that Pekka Rinne is not a Hall of Famer, again, unless he wins 2 cups, a couple of Vezinas, right? And that could be a tall task at this point of his life.
And when you look at the last 5 goalies to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame since 1993, Grant Fuhr, Patrick Waugh, Ed Belfour, Dominik Hasek, Rogi Vacone, and then Martin Brodeur will eventually get in. So 6 since 93.
They're good.
They all have stupid numbers when it comes to Vezinas and Stanley Cups.
They're all in the legendary conversation.
Yeah, and Pekka was late really with his career start too.
Right.
So that hurts him right there just because of when he started his career as a starting goaltender. He was already quote unquote older from a lot of guys now.
He is in the Hall of Very Good though.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Especially if they get 9 more postseason wins.
I can't wait to get
this
my invitation to the
postseason.
Hall of Very Good.
He should be.
Wow.
He should be. I'm just going to leave that alone. He should be in the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
No, the day after he retires. Like, it should just be,
Okay. We'll call him up. Make it happen.
I'll call some
I'm
people.
Jeremy K. Gover. You better put it in.
You better recognize.
Speaking of Preds stars on a national level, Philip Forsberg is officially a star on a national level, and we will tell you why next because of someone that was on the morning show this morning, Morning Drive. He tells you why next. I'm Ryan Porth, joined by Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio, Jeremy K. Gover of theGameNashville.com and the Preds Radio Network. This is Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Is that Greg Wyshynski?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back into the show. Ryan Porth, Justin Bradford, Jeremy K. Gover with you here on Preds Insiders. A little over 24 hours away from Game 7, Preds Jets at Bridgestone Arena. All the action can be heard right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. All right, earlier today on Morning Drive with Nick Cale, Braden Gall, and Derek Mason, Greg Wyshynski of ESPN made his weekly stop on Wednesdays. And they asked him about Philip Forsberg. Philip Forsberg scored 2 goals in Game 6, both of the highlight variety, especially the second one where he went between the legs to make it 3-0 in the third period. And that prompted a question of where has Philip Forsberg's star risen nationally? Here's what Greg Wyshynski had to say.
Well, my friends in the Nashville community that follow me on Twitter will probably be happy to hear that, yes, I believe he's a star player now. Yeah, I think he's graduated from being a name that we all knew to being somebody that you make time to watch because, the minute you start, putting out these viral clips, like you said, and scoring goals in the manner in which he scored them in Game 6, you make time to watch a player like that's able to accomplish that sort of thing. The only component missing for Forsberg right now as far as completely being on that next level would probably be challenging for some scoring titles and being in the mix for awards and things like that. But right now, I mean, he's clearly one of the most exciting offensive players in these playoffs, and rightfully so. I mean, he's pretty incredible.
That was ESPN's Greg Wyshynski on Philip Forsberg earlier this morning on Morning Drive. If you missed the full interview, go to theGameNashville.com, listen to it on demand. Gover saw you tweet this as it was happening, as Greg Wyshynski was on with the guys. And
don't tweet and drive, kids.
Forsberg has 15 points in 12 games this postseason, 7 goals. And for me, the biggest difference for Philip Forsberg is the fact that his goals this postseason are of the highlight variety, where they basically break Twitter every single time he's scoring right now. The 2 against Colorado and then the 2 in Game 6. Whereas last postseason, the numbers at the top of my head correct, I think he scored 9 goals in the postseason. But none of them were of this highlight variety. All of them were greasy goals around the crease. But now he is making a name for himself by showing off his skill to the national media and the national viewership.
It takes a giant stage for a player who's not in a giant market to emerge. Okay, and the Predators had that in the Stanley Cup final run last year, and Pekka Rinne shined, right? And he was the talk, and of course PK Subban got a ton of attention as he always does. And Ryan Ellis emerged as a star defenseman in the National Hockey League. All that happened because of the Stanley Cup final run. Maybe not PK. He already had some baggage. But Philip Forsberg this year, though, is taking that stage and vaulting himself into the stratosphere of, look, I may be only 23, 24 years old, but give me 3 years and I'll be in the Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews. I'm not going to say he's better than those players, but I will say he will be within 10 points, 15 points of them towards the league lead, in my opinion.
I don't know if I would put Forsberg in that same realm yet.
Okay. Oh, I said 2 or 3 years.
Maybe. I mean, he was
That's
a point.
Soft no.
He was basically a point. He was basically a point per game player in the regular season this year, despite the injury in January and then the 3-game suspension for nothing. But I would put him kind of in the same breath as a Tarasenko.
Okay.
In St. Louis.
Are you
now.
scared of Tarasenko when you play the Blues?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would be scared of Phil Forsberg right now with the way he's playing. I mean, since
especially if you're a defenseman,
mid-March for the last month and a half, really, he's been or 2.5 months. He's been incredible for this Preds team.
It's all about the stage, right? So, and we've seen him do more spectacular stuff in the regular season on a Tuesday night against Calgary that nobody really notices, right? Thursday night against Florida, okay, great. Like he did
the back-to-back hat tricks that he had last season.
Right, yeah, phenomenal. Got some buzz, but in the Stanley Cup playoffs, especially when you're the only game on, and you do something like that.
So right now, 12 games played, 15 points for Philip Forsberg. Last season, 22 games in the playoffs, 16 points. He's already on the right track. So you think if he's going at this pace right now of what he could be setting himself up for if they go on in the conference final, if they go on in the Stanley Cup final, I mean, right now at this moment, it's between Philip Forsberg and Marc-Andre Fleury for Conn Smythe, in what I would think.
I was just about to make that point because in the conference final, every season annually is when they start talking Conn Smythe.
Yep.
When it gets down to the 4 teams left in the conference finals, that's when that Conn Smythe chatter starts. Philip Forsberg is at the top of that list for the Preds, especially if they were to win tomorrow night in Game 7 against Winnipeg, and he has a big goal or any goal really. I mean, put his name up there with Marc-Andre Fleury. I put
Mark Scheifele on that list. Scheifele has been lights out for Winnipeg.
I put Scheifele and Bufflin up there for Winnipeg if they were to emerge in Game 7 tomorrow night.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they could always lose, and then they're not in the conversation anymore.
That's
too.
true. Very true.
But Philip Forsberg, in terms of him being in the conversation with elite, let's look at some of those teams that do have those elite goal scorers. They have to rely on them oftentimes, too. Nathan MacKinnon is having to lead the Colorado Avalanche. Connor McDavid having to lead the Edmonton Oilers.
And even that
didn't even get in. But Philip Forsberg's on a team built for depth, where he can have more balanced scoring. So he really will have to jump and make a huge leap if he wants to get in that conversation in terms of being a 40-plus goal scorer and being near the top and making runs for the points lead and everything, too.
Which might, actually, now that you mentioned that, might impact his numbers. He might have better numbers on a team where they're like, all right, Philip, well, we got 3 minutes left. You're going to be triple shifted. Get out there.
Yeah.
You're our only offense.
Forward playing 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, we see what he can do when he is relied upon to score a big goal, whether it's the playoffs or the regular season. He's the most clutch player on this roster.
And then he's selfless and gives the puck up to Victor Arvidsson for the empty netter because he can't guarantee he's going to get that hat trick.
Let me tell
just
you about
like
my best friend.
Just like Victor Arvidsson giving Philip Forsberg the empty net goal in Tampa
at the end of the regular season. Scratch yours.
Yeah.
Swede. It's so Swede. They're so nice. No, seriously. The Swedes, they get along very well. They're very nice.
I know, but that was a little lame, I must say.
I'm getting the look from Buck right now.
Okay, that's when you know it is.
That's when you know it's really bad.
I was not trying to make any pun or anything. I just said it's the Swede thing. They're so nice to each other.
To your point earlier in the segment, Gover, to wrap this up, last postseason was a breakout for the top 4 defensively. That's when the core 4 really emerged.
Yes.
That's when Roman Josi,
Yes.
PK Subban, Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm, that's when, as a foursome, they became a big deal nationally. This postseason so far through 2 rounds is when Philip Forsberg, I would even throw Ryan Johansson into that mix as well, where they are starting to emerge as well-known players nationally.
Everyone in hockey knew that the Predators' top 4 was legit last year coming into the playoffs. But then they got to see it, and they got to experience it. And then they got to watch it go to the Stanley Cup final and be dominant at times. So, I just think that, first of all, the team could really help themselves out if those top 4 could get back to that, for one. Second of all, I think this is Philip Forsberg's year. Forsberg and Arvidsson even, and Johansson, that top line is really making a name for themselves.
Now, speaking of the top 4, too, last year everybody knew when we've said PK Subban, but last year, even as you said, Ryan Ellis. But who's been getting a lot of talk a little bit too? Matthias Ekholm. That is a name that most hockey people, unless you're watching the Nashville Predators, aren't going to know. You're going to know Roman Josi, especially now he's the captain. He was wearing an A before. You're going to know Ryan Ellis because he's a national treasure to Canada. You're going to know PK Subban because he's PK Subban. But Matthias Ekholm is kind of that lost name sometimes. But he's proving, based on his play, that he got a dog and is able to prove himself now.
Wow. A Barry Trotz reference on Matthias Ekholm. For people who don't know that story, it was one of Matthias Ekholm's first career games in the National Hockey League, right? It was back in
it was against Vancouver, wasn't
the 11-12 season, I think.
Something like that, and he was bad.
Yes. And do you remember the exact quote?
It's the NHL if you're going to be scared to get a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Trotz, who never called out anybody.
Never.
No.
Was like, yeah, what the hell?
And go back, and they sent him back to Europe right after that.
Oh, it was
you're
not
gone.
not good. But hey, kudos to him for persevering through that. An NHL
Absolutely.
coach came out in the media and said, get a dog. And here you are as one of the best defensemen in the National
Chip on the
Hockey League.
shoulder.
Yep.
All of Vegas
Great.
can prove that. Chip on the shoulder, what it can do for you.
That's
Coming
enough.
up next, we get to our expectations for Game 7. What do we think of the potential lineup for Game 7 that we saw out there for practice earlier today? We'll get into that next, plus our favorite Game 7s all time. Oh, yeah. Justin Bradford, Jeremy K. Gover alongside. I'm Ryan Porth. This is Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Well, already the last segment coming up. Yeah, put that in. I can smell your breath all the way over here.
Hey, wow. Do you think that's what Ryan Callahan said to Brad Marchand?
Oh, God. Man. Still, major props to Callahan for not losing his complete shit during that.
Also, major props to Pierre LeBrun for asking Peter Laviolette on Game 5 day about licking. First smile we've seen out of Lavie on a game day all postseason.
Except when he, in Colorado, before Game 4, and Adam was like, I've already asked this question, but asked it a different way. And he goes, I bet it's going to be the same question. Like, he just let it go. That was awesome.
Oh, wow.
Really? Did you just
The Blaine
tweet out
Gabbert?
the Blaine Gabbert?
Not terrible. Did you hear when I said the Buck was staring at me? What he? I don't know if he said it in your ear or anything too. And in my ear, he goes,
No, he
actually,
did.
no. This is really just how I look.
What did I say?
No, me. He
I
said
know.
it to me because I said, and Buck staring at
I
me.
would mind that a lot less if it was from your account, not yours.
Play Legendary Golf at French Lake Resort, the only place in the country where you can play courses by two Hall of Fame designers on the same property. Our Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses offer two very different challenges. Experience them both and save with our Hall of Fame package. Our two historic hotels are unique as well. Cap it off with a fun visit to the French Lake Casino. Check us out online at FrenchLake.com. Bring a group and save even more. Play Legendary Golf this season at French Lake Resort.
Don't miss a second of the action during the Preds playoff run. No matter the area, Dos Equis has you covered with a lineup of Preds Dos Equis viewing destination locations. Fill up on game day with something interesting. Dos Equis. Catch the action at Dolan's Deli and Bar and Bailey's Sports Grill in Rivergate and on Broadway in downtown Nashville.
Was that supposed to be from the game account?
Dos Equis viewing destinations. Go to thegamenashville.com. Embellish your stories wild. I just like to keep Porth on his toes.
Oh. That was a scary point look.
Get a dog. Well, I'm going to look that up.
Did you like that though?
That was awesome.
Pulling that up.
He got a dog. And he's
I'm
doing
sure
great.
if you sit back far enough, Jim Diamond tweeted
Oh,
it out.
yes.
Oh yeah.
But I'm sure that was in like January.
And I wasn't even planning to bring up the dog until I brought up the dog. That was not a planned.
What'd you say the quote was?
I don't know, if you're scared, get a dog.
Something like that, yeah.
If you're scared of playing in the NHL, get a dog. Great recall, man. That was awesome.
It's one of those quotes.
He prefaced it with, I thought he was horrible, just horrible. That was his first line.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. Man, Barry.
Some JT bringing us back here on
J-Tim.
Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game. JT is in Bridgestone Arena tonight, which causes the 2 days in between Games 6 and 7 of the Preds Jets series. Game 7 tomorrow night, little over 24 hours away. Pre-game at 6, puck drop at 7 right here. ESPN 102.5 The Game, your home for all things Smashville. All right. Earlier today at practice, Mike Fisher did not practice, and Peter Laviolette after practice did not have an update. And the fourth line, without Mike Fisher on the ice, had Scott Hartnell, Calle Yarncroke, and Ryan Hartman on it. Ryan Hartman, not Mila Salma or Mila Salma. I am completely
Porth is
butchering
tired, everybody.
his name. I am tired. Mika Salamaki. So, is this the right move? If Mike Fisher cannot play in Game 7, do we think this is the right move? I'll start with you, Justin.
Yes. Oh, you want more?
Yeah.
No, I absolutely think this is the right. Go give me that look, Gover. No, it's the right move because this is what you have the depth for. So you're not having to go into the Black Aces. The only one I would think that potentially, if anything happened, that would get in would be Freddie Gaudreau.
I would agree.
Just because of his experience. I mean, he has a few goals in the Stanley Cup final. But
wouldn't that be something?
That would be something.
Oh,
but
my goodness.
that's why you made the trade. That's why you have the depth, is because if an injury does happen, and it's different when it's a center, because that's the only reason I would see potentially a Freddie Gaudreau is because of the center position. But Cal Yarncroke, being healthy, hopefully, fully healthy now, he slots in there, and that means that fourth line truly can score when you have a Ryan Hartman in there as well.
Here's the thing, though, with Ryan Hartman. I am concerned about the penalties that he takes.
You draw them and take them.
And in a Game 7 where your season is on the line, I know he can draw them, but it's the taking that concerns me in a Game 7 compared to Mika Salomaki, where you know exactly what you're getting out of Mika Salomaki. His ceiling is not as high as Ryan Hartman, but the floor is not as low.
Look, with Bufflin out there, to agitate Hartman, especially because those guys are going to know to target Ryan Hartman to get the Predators on the penalty kill so they can use their potent offense on the power play, it's not a good recipe. But I have officially retired, as you all know, from predicting the lineup and judging
your papers
and judging Peter Laviolette's roster calls because
like all media have.
Because I went on Twitter after the game was over. It was Game 4, right? And Hartnell came in, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. It'll never happen again." So I'm not going to take to the airwaves and then do it. So I'm out.
Well, let's just put it this way, though. In big picture, for me, I don't think it matters who's on the fourth line tomorrow night in a Game 7. While someone on the fourth line could be a Game 7 hero, we see random Game 7 heroes all the time. Max Talbot in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final for Pittsburgh scored 2 goals. I mean, come on. It comes down to the stars needing to be the stars. The players that we're not debating whether or not they should be in or out of the lineup. Guys like Roman Josi, PK Subban, Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, Victor Arvidsson, Pekka Rinne, the second line. It all comes down to those guys and what they do in this Game 7, as opposed to, the ongoing debate of Hartman or Salomaki in this Game 7, or earlier in the regular season when they start compiling all the depth of, is it going to be Colton Sissons or Scott Hartnell coming out of the lineup? It at the end of the day, in a Game 7, it comes down to the top players.
Where's Ryan Ellis's Ellis bomb from the point? I truly want to know that. He's taken one. It was the last game. Remember Bradford, the last home game? I said, was that his first one all playoffs? And you said, yeah, I think so. He's his biggest weapon.
It's on a milk carton.
It's on turn your mic on. That might help. If his biggest weapon is that Shea Weber-esque, in a small package, slap shot from the blue line, and he's barely used it this playoff. I don't know what the issue is there.
I will say
maybe?
Both Colorado and Winnipeg are doing a great job of getting in front of the shots from the blue line.
Absolutely. And I get that a lot of that, right, maybe 60%-ish, is the opponents taking that away. But there have been several times where I've watched in person, both in Denver and in Nashville, where I've been like, all right, here it comes. And he elects to pass. Or I just
I need to stop predicting things, Gover.
I guess so.
Because it's not happen. No, I've been shocked too. Because especially in the regular season, when he winds up, that is a rocket. I mean, PK has the one-timer rocket, but Ellis, even if it's not a one-timer, he can wind up and slap that.
Ellis is more of a rocket. PK Subban's slap shot seems a little heavier than Ellis's.
I'll give you
so
that.
It'd be more like a.
They can both hurt guys.
Like a bomb.
What's Ellis bomb?
However you want to describe
semantics.
it.
The point is that Ellis has not unloaded that.
No, he hasn't.
And it's just interesting to me that's a true weapon, and I want to know why it hasn't been used.
So tomorrow night, Game 7, Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Ryan Porth, joined by Penalty Box radio host Justin Bradford. You can hear him again right here on these airwaves in an hour and 9 minutes at 8 o'clock.
Exactly.
Also,
so
Jeremy
specific.
K. Gover from theGameNashville.com and the Preds Radio Network. Game 7, the 2 best words in sports, and this Game 7 will feature the 2 best teams in the National Hockey League's regular season.
In the second round. So a lot of special moments over the years in Game 7s in the Stanley Cup playoffs. This is the first time, as I've mentioned throughout the show, this is the first time one of these Game 7s is going to happen in this city. The only other 2 the Preds have played have been on the West Coast. First round Game 7 in Anaheim in 2016, and then 1 round later that same postseason in San Jose. First time
it's happening in Nashville. So I want to ask the question to you two, since we're all three of us are, I would describe hockey nerds. Your favorite Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs ever. Your favorite Game 7.
Okay, I have two, but I'll list my first one first.
Okay.
Just because two really stood out to me. It is the year 1996, May 16th, Detroit and St. Louis in overtime, double overtime, 0-0. Steve Yzerman winds up, blue line, slap shot, goal, Detroit moves on. That's in the Western Conference semifinals.
I can still hear Gary Thorne make that call of that goal on ESPN.
I was watching that game live. I can too.
I would shout it, but I don't want to hurt the listeners' eardrums.
Buck might have a problem with the EQ there.
He might.
Second one.
Hold on, Bradford. Who was the last St. Louis Blue to touch the puck?
Well, you told me this before we came on air.
Wow, the listeners didn't know that.
I want to
along,
give you
man.
credit. Wayne Gretzky.
Very good.
Thanks.
Carry
I want to
on.
give you credit. I'm not going to steal your stats.
It's cool.
Another one was
Theater of the mind.
the Inner Red Wings coming out, just because that's what I grew up with. May 31st, 2002, Detroit, Colorado, Game 7, 7-0 drubbing. Detroit over Colorado. Here's some players that scored in that game. Tomas Holmstrom, Sergei Fedorov, Luke Robitaille.
Wow.
Holmstrom again, Brett Hull, Pavel Datsyuk.
That was Western Conference Final? So that was
Yes.
right before Detroit went on to win the Stanley Cup against
So
Carolina.
what about some names that scored for Detroit?
Yeah.
And there, the kind of the overlap, too, with Datsyuk scoring there and then also having Fedorov. Interesting.
Gover, what's your favorite?
My favorite Game 7 ever was the 1994 Eastern Conference Final. Zelepukin scores. Valari Zelepukin scores with
Look at
like
you.
20 seconds left to force overtime. And then in double overtime, we have one of the most iconic calls in broadcast history.
Keesoff for the Devils, plays it cross ice into the far corner. Matteau swoops in to intercept. Matteau behind the net, swings it in front. He scores! Matteau! 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 Stefan Matteau! And the Rangers have one more hill to climb, baby! But it's Mount Vancouver! The Rangers are headed to the final!
Remember, 1940 was the last time they'd won a Stanley Cup at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and they finally got back to the final, and they ended up winning because, Messier's guarantee, blah, 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 and they, that was all on that path.
Every single time that call gives me goosebumps.
Every time. And it was so, I watched that game live. I think I had it on VHS tape because I recorded it.
Wow.
And I watched that so many times. It was so good. That's the favorite game of all time. That's the best game, front to back, both teams, all 100 and whatever the math is, minutes because it's double overtime, I've ever seen. Still, to this day, it's the best game I've ever seen.
For any Game 7 that is high level in any series, if it's a high level Game 7, I'm always on the edge of my seat. It doesn't matter which two teams, even if it's the Panthers and the Devils in a Game 7 like they were in like 5 or 6 years ago and went to overtime, I was on the edge of my seat. The Devils and the Panthers. The only game ever between the Devils and the Panthers that I'll ever be on the edge of my seat.
Can you say it again? Devils.
The Devils and the Panthers.
There you go.
My favorite Game 7 ever. One of the most memorable was 5 years ago, Bruins-Leafs in the first round when the Bruins were down 4-1 in the third period. They scored 3 goals, and then Patrice Bergeron scoring in overtime of Game 7. That's one of my favorite. Also, Game 7 Stanley Cup Final, Avalanche Devils back in 2001.
Yes.
I think those were the two best teams in the National Hockey League at that point, and that was the night that Ray Bourque finally won a Stanley Cup. Alex Tanguay scored a couple goals for the Avalanche. That's a memorable one too. But hopefully we get a memorable Game 7 in Bridgestone Arena tomorrow night.
Not too memorable, though. I don't want a triple overtime marathon.
Why not?
Because I got to work in the morning, Porth. I don't want to have to worry about getting home at 4 a.m.
It's not an 8:30 start. You have nothing to worry about.
It's quadruple overtime, I do.
Well, you just said it right there. It's going to happen.
Actually,
I'll be okay with that because you know what? We're all going to get so many clicks and listens. It's going to be insane.
Well, that's true. I know we got to go.
Stats.
But Kevin Fiala actually did say that today. He actually said, well, we got to play a full 60 minutes or however long it takes.
Yeah.
And I was like, please don't say the word.
Well, we will see whether or not it ends in 60 minutes or past that. Tomorrow night, 24 hours and 10 minutes away from puck drop in Smashville tomorrow night. Should be a lot of fun. Preds, Jets, we cannot wait to bring it to you right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Pregame at 6, puck drop at 7. For Jeremy K. Gover of the Preds Radio Network and TheGameNashville.com. For Justin Bradford of Penalty Box Radio, who you will be able to hear after Slapshot Radio coming up next at 8 o'clock. Penalty Box Radio, 8 o'clock. Justin, thank you as always. Jeremy, thank you as always.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
For those two, I'm Ryan Porth. This has been Preds Insiders, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Coming up next, It is Slap Shot Radio.
It was just an all business thank you right there. Great. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.